what's up, everybody? This is Dr. Regina Bradley, and this is Outkasted Conversations, number 31. And we're going visual today, all Outkast visual culture, everything, with one of the up-and-coming greats, Mr. Floyd Daniel Hobson, who is a PhD student in African American and African Diaspora Studies. That's just a long term to say. At Indiana University Bloomington. Floyd, how you doing today? What's going on?
I'm fine, just chilling, just like working on my qualifying exams, everything like that.
All good, all good. So you know what you got to do to get into the club. How did you become outcasted?
Oh wow, it's kind of funny. I thought about that question in like two different ways. Like the first way that I thought about it was um when I became a fan, and that was roughly around, I believe, 1994, 95, when uh TLC's Crazy Sexy Cool came out, and then the last song was Something Wicked This Way Comes with Drea on it on the first verse. I was like, who is this? What was this? It was just and at that time I really didn't have a lot of access to music because when we was growing up, we either listened to like what my parents listened to, or we would be in church, or we would be done a thing. So when I was 10, um, we had access to the radio, and the first one of the first I heard like on my own was elevators. So like I pretty much went to when I had like my little money or whatever, I went to Walgreens. You know, they used to sell those dollar cassette singles. So I ended up going to get elevators, and I would listen to that, and I listened to the instrumental like back and forth and just turn it over. So that's pretty much how I became a fan at that time. And then it was the second way I kind of approached him was the lyric that Andre 3000 says in Due Time, when CeeLo Green, where he kind of talks about basically like you have a choice and you can choose to be who you want. And basically, I've always kind of been that way. So it was like really just a natural progression. So that's how I pretty much saw it.
Okay, cool. So, aside from the academic grind, you also are a photographer and visual cultural critic. Let's talk about that a little bit. What are some of the ways that we can think about the visual aspects of Outkast, the fashion, all that other good stuff, and how we understand Black identity and masculinity?
Well, when I first started to really get into Outkast, I think it was right at the end of when So the Playlistic Cadillac Music came out, and it was right at the beginning of Elevator. So being 10 years old and seeing elevators at the time, or even hearing ATLians, it was really just a different experience, especially when it became the masculinity, because around that time, Pac was huge and Biggie was huge, especially back in Gary, Indiana. So it was like when seeing their videos and seeing Dre in the turban and like the long Africaness garbs, and you seeing Big Boy, in his street garb. It was very much to me. It was like, okay, this is very different. I never seen people like this. And then it was also when I saw videos such as like ATLians, and they had the hieroglyphics on the wall, and then when you actually get into like the video, you find that they go into a club in the pyramids. It's like it's just kind of like this mix of culture in a way that I haven't really experienced by that time when I was coming up and cognitively purchasing music. So especially then around the time when Aquemini came out, when I first got into Outkast, it was very much okay. The way that they progressed was like they had this hip hop aesthetic in their first years, and they wore like the Atlanta jerseys and everything like that. And that was all I really knew coming up, especially in Gary, was repping your city and things like that. But then when they came out with Rosa Parks, and he had on what do you call those things? The huge pants with like the remix military outfits, and it was just okay. What the hell is he doing? Like this looks like mad weird. And it was like the same thing with Skew It on the Barbie when he had like the white wig with the white fur shorts and everything, and it was rocking the. He was just so confident with it and so masculine at the same time, and like his flow itself was just ridiculous. So it just I kind of put him in that lane where it was just, that's just him, that's just Andre or whatever. And then, you know, and it's kind of funny because each time that they would come out, I would always have that relationship with Andre specifically because he was always okay. When I finally get it, around like just around like the art of storytelling, and you see like okay, oh this is just Andre, and then like he remixes it again with Stankonia and B.O.B., and then he comes out looking like Jimi Hendrix or like Bootsy Collins or George Clinton type, and you just like after a while it just gets to the point. Well, that's just how he is, and I think like all of that is kind of their way of appropriating not only black masculinity in their perspective ways, but also appropriating blackness and appropriating otherness, like in their specific ways. And I thought that all the way from Players Ball, that was before my time, but when I saw it, and also Ida Wild Blue, I think that was Andre's last off. I think it's just to see the progression. It was like all of these, like this whole spectrum of masculinity was just different. It was appealing to me at the same time. So.
Hmm. I mean, I think too that it brings up a really interesting point in using fashion as kind of like a protest thing, not necessarily like a protest in terms of political, but protest in terms of self-identification, and pushing hip hop into this different kind of conversation about how they can use clothing to produce a certain type of narrative. And as you pointed out, I think Andre does that really, really well, especially considering his reunion jumpsuits. I
Yeah.
wanted to hear your thoughts on, what do you think the significance of the jumpsuits and the different little messages. I mean, he says he doesn't use Twitter, but it's like his suits can be thought about like quick little tweets, if you will, about how he's feeling about certain type of things. What are your thoughts
Yeah.
on that?
Because I was actually like when I saw it, it was by that time, of course, I was just like, it was Andre being Andre. But then I was thinking it has to be deeper than that because it's like not only is he just mad modest, but it's just his mindset is just so deeper than just that. So I would just look at it. I would look at all of, I think it was 27, 28 so far. And I would look at like he would say things like "ninjas kill me" or like "big girls need love." And it was like the tweet that like the part that everybody was kind of talking about, where it's like, uh, dark people get like the worst treatment. Why? Then it was just being the internet person that I am. It's like it almost looked as if it was a play on, when you log on and like I'm a Tumblr user, so you log on and you see like the little memes in there in black, and then with the Helvetica font, and they have these prophetic type of like text or these quotes from like these artists, and then it's almost as if when I was talking to one of my friends about it, it's almost as if he was a walking meme or like a walking social meme, and it was like the way that it was almost critiquing that in the way celebrity is um, kind of a living, breathing meme in a way. So it was almost as though, to me, it was more like what you said, where it felt like multiple streams of consciousness that he was probably having that day, or something that he was feeling at that moment, and just decided to put, because like you said, he was like, I don't have a Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, and then it would be like obviously obvious, or it would be just things like that. And then with the price tag that he wore on his waistband, it was almost as if I tried to critique that in ways. It was like, okay, so when I was reading a lot of the articles, specifically the one that he wrote with like the New York Times, it was kind of like I wanted to say, was his heart really into what he really wanted to do, like with these concerts? So was it more like with the price tag on the jumpsuits? Was it selling out for the money, selling out in terms of being this actor on stage, like for his fans, and or was it, you know, literally 60 million on tour that they were standing to make from this, and they were selling out shows? Because it was just when I was looking at it was just it has to be deeper than it. And like one of my friends was like, maybe this is just like a long, like these are song lyrics that he never really got to say, or it was maybe just a way of like he's trying to tell us something in his 3,000-ish way, even though he says fuck 3,000 on one of his jumpsuits. It's just like the way that it could have been doing. But I think that at the end of the day, what it really does is it kind of provokes conversation, especially either it be on here or it be in person, where it's just using his body in a way to kind of speak to these streams of consciousness that he might not only have, but many people might have, and through a black male body at that. So it was just the way that I kind of saw it. But
No, I think that's a really good analysis of that. And it kind of leads to the our last question is what is the significance of visual culture visualizing Outkast? Like we always we talked about the significance of the literal sound, right? But what is the importance of their visual aesthetics and how we remember the significance of Outkast?
um, I think when you look at their videography, I think one of the things that you can really say is that it celebrated blackness and a lot of these subcultures that really don't get a lot of, I won't say shine, but a lot of a lot of support, or a lot of publicity in a different way, like in a different light that's not negative. So it's like starting from the very beginning. I mean,
Mm.
they appropriated pimp culture. They appropriated like hood culture with, hanging out playing spades, or going to house parties, or the pimps, the hustlers, the hoes, or all of these things. And like they might have negative connotations, but I feel that really when you think about it, I kind of equate it to the idea that you can be taught in different ways, but I feel that, say for in the literary sense, where we might have like a Audre Lorde, or we might have a James Baldwin and a Toni Morrison, you also gotta have the Donald Goines, you gotta have the Iceberg Slim, you gotta have Sister Soldier, you gotta have all of these things that actually critique these spaces that we never really think about in the academic space. And I
Mm.
think that when we think about Outkast, they tend to do that. And each album is almost very, I want to say Stevie Wonderish, or even like Prince's, in the way that they kind of make sure that they never do the same thing twice, or they kind of progress with each album. And Janelle Monáe does that as well through like her track list on both of her albums. It's very much a way of not being confined to just a certain aesthetic of what it means to be black, to be male, to be the other.
Mm.
and also never losing their Southern twang to it, you know. So always, like through all of these things, it was like they still epitomize the Southern aesthetic. And with Andre, it was either multiple types of like the Southern gentleman, and that way with Big Boy towards really the way that most like many black men were and how they ended up, especially with his caricature of what it meant to be the pimp or the player, with like the three-piece suits and the prints and being suited and booted, and, you know, things like that. So I felt like all of that was really important as well. And I felt that um I think you talked about it in one of your previous videos about consciousness. I think that also it might not be as concrete, but like otherness is a form of consciousness, and what that means to necessarily be the other and appropriate the other and visualize the other through their videos as well as their style and photo shoots and things like that. So,
Dope. Oh, that's great. I hope that you expand on that in your work. How can the people get in touch with you and what you're working on besides the academic stuff and all that other good stuff?
mainly, a lot of my things deal with not only the other in subcultures, but black masculinity and how it's performed. Um, right now, like I just like with my masters, I kind of critique the ballroom space and LGBTQ queer culture and how it fits into um the black experience. And in terms of my creative dissertation, I want to use photography as a historical narrative for a lot of these subcultural spaces. And in terms of reaching me, I'm pretty much Daniel Warhol on Facebook, Daniel Warhol on Instagram, on Twitter, Tumblr. uh, my work can be viewed in those places, but also Hobson Photography, spelled Photografie, on Tumblr, and pretty much just really those spaces now.
Dope. Well, we appreciate you for dropping a little bit of your cultural knowledge on us. And
Uh,
best wishes to successfully completing your dissertation and all that other good stuff. I'm Dr. Regina Bradley. This is Outkasted Conversations. We'll holler at y'all next week. Y'all be easy.